Good evening. It's good to see this number out. We've got several of our number that are out of town, but we've got some visitors with us, and we're certainly grateful for your presence. I am not the normal Wednesday night Bible class teacher. Our evangelist with Jesse Flowers is normally teaching the class. So we are continuing our class with Parenting God's Way, and I will issue the disclaimer. I do have 3 children, but they're all still young, so I am by no means an expert whatsoever. And this is one of the things that I know we had a lesson about worrying, but this is one of the things that troubles me as a parent, and wanting to make sure that I'm doing everything to the best of my ability. And yes, there are times I lose sleep at night thinking about the job that I'm doing as a parent. So one of the things I enjoy about the class is being able to get comments from those of you that have much more experience than myself. And so we'll lean on that again this evening as we continue with the final lesson of guiding our children to choose the right companions. And this is in respect both to friends, but also more importantly maybe is your lifelong mate, and how important it is with the decision that we have if you choose to get married, who you're going to choose as your mate. So there are 6 questions. There's one more class next week that, Lord willing, Jesse will be back to teach. So my goal is to at least get through 3, and then we'll leave him the last 3. If we get farther, that'd be fine too, but hopefully I can leave or don't leave too much that he can't complete it next week. So we started last week into Lesson 10, talking about question 1, why does it matter who our children choose as their friends? And I know we discussed the first one. I was doing the attendance, so I wasn't for sure if we got to the second one. We're going to go ahead and start with B. So if you would be turning over to Proverbs chapter 13 and verse 20, and we'll start there. We're going to go through these passages again with the thought in mind of why does it matter who our children choose as their friends. And I'm going to start over here with Brother Gill. If you would read Proverbs chapter 13 and verse 20.
He who walks with wise men will be wise, but the companion of fools will be destroyed.
And since we started with Brother Gill, I'll just go ahead and ask you, what do you take away from Proverbs 13 and verse 20 in regards to choosing friends?
Trying to surround yourself with people that are wise in the Scriptures so that they will influence you for positive.
Okay. Somebody else. Jeff?
In the verse I have, the second half of that verse says, associate with fools and get in trouble. That's a pretty simple way to put it, to think about it. I think, unfortunately, I hung around with a couple of them and got in trouble a couple of times growing up. And it's hard to, convincing your children to hang out with the right people is the hard part. But being able to put them in environments like Bible classes and the things that we have here with some of the training classes and that, where they're around other children and around Christians who are wise, it sure helps.
Yeah.
And then making better decisions.
Yeah, and it's difficult whenever the one that you're hanging around and getting in trouble with is your brother, because it's hard to get away from that relationship. I'm just kidding. I love you, John. But that one of the things that Jeff said makes me think of a question that I have been thinking about throughout this lesson, and even preparing for the lesson, is how do we help guide our children into understanding the importance, one, and helping them understand how to choose. What are some things that we can do? What are some practical things that we can do to help our children in choosing their friends? Norm?
Choose good friends yourself.
Okay.
In other words, who do you hang around with? And your kids see that. And if they are in contact with those, maybe it's people at work. You bring, what kind of folks are they? Are you hanging around with them on the weekends, or are you hanging around with? It's just do as I say, not as I do, kind of a thing. You need to be conscious of that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, something that we've obviously hit on throughout the class. If we're going to try to train our children in these ways, then we need to be living these in our own lives. And so, yeah, the people that you surround yourself with is going to play a huge part in your kids. Norm?
You've done your job up to this point. This is where you lean on your children to being the influencer, not the influenced. I remember when I was a teenager, my parents let me have some friends, and it was because I was expected to do right, and I was expected to lead my friends to do right. And with that understanding, when hearing my parents, as that is the expectation of me, I then took that role upon myself. So if there was trouble that was amiss, I was the one that had to put the brakes on. Why? Because I was supposed to do right. And if that's the expectation that we have of them, that we've given them the standards, they've raised to the point where now they're teenagers, they know the standards and the behavior, that they are expected to be the one to stand out and say, no, let's put the stop on this because this is wrong. That will help them with what friends they then choose or how they are influenced by their friends. And that was coupled with the idea that if you do that, and those friends choose to do it anyway, then your choice is to not be their friend. And that it is okay to take somebody that you know and say, we are no longer friends because I cannot participate in that.
And that's one of the things I want to talk about with one of these passages is there's a choice. You have a choice. And we need to make sure that our children understand that. You have a choice as to who you're going to hang out with. You obviously have a choice as to who you're going to marry. And so that we need to understand the concept of making good choices, good decisions. Bonnie?
Kind of like how we talk about when we get rid of sin in our lives, we have to replace it with something good. And it's the same thing with our children and helping them. They're going to naturally go to school, most kids, and be surrounded by worldly people. So we have to be very proactive and look for ways to surround them with godly people. And I know we're fortunate to live in such an area where we have a lot of Christians in the Bible Belt or whatever. So whether it's a camp that's, Christians attend, or it's a Devo somewhere that, somebody's having an hour or two away, or just a monthly Bible study or something like that, we have to look for those situations and encourage our kids, get our kids there. It takes time, it takes money, but it's worth it to get them associated and acquainted with other Christians in the area.
Yeah, I think it takes a huge part on the parents you do have to sacrifice a little bit in being willing to provide these extra opportunities to your children. And yeah, sometimes that is going to be a sacrifice of your time or of your money or both. But we have to realize that it is worth it. Brad and then Todd.
Yeah, I'd say that a practical way to help them understand that would be to help them understand that there's life after high school. I wasn't a Christian in high school, but getting in with a cool crowd is important, and being able to have the perspective to zoom out and see that it's a big world and there might not be Christians at whatever little high school. There's opportunities to make friends elsewhere, even if you don't see it or experience it right there.
Yeah, and the cool kid in high school, when that kid turns 40, he may not be as cool then. Todd?
Yeah, a couple of practical things we've done, like in public school, you're always worrying about who they're going to befriend. But as they join the extracurriculars, you can get a sense of, are these the wise kids or are these the fools? And like, for instance, we had Elliot on a football team for a while, and we learned pretty quickly that was a different cut of families than it was in soccer. And so we just let that go, and we're staying with soccer. Same with, like, even going back to the 90s, when I was in high school, the theater crowd had a lot of gays and lesbians. And I'm sure it's worse now, so we've tried to discourage that. And we encourage things like band. But now we're hearing from Jude, no, that's got at least half of them are into this LGBT stuff. And so we're monitoring that, right? You know, and he's with the ones who are opposed to that, but there's a lot of pressure. And so he's even letting us know, hey, there's even better groups, extracurriculars where that's not as much of a problem.
And I think that that's part of it, and kind of go along with what Bonnie said, is you have to invest in your own children. I don't have any kids in high school yet, but you have to constantly be a part of their lives and checking up on them and who are they talking to, who are they befriending, so that you can help in guiding them. With this particular passage, the Vulgate Latin version, toward the end of the passage, it says, shall become like them, be a fool as they are, and grow still more and more foolish. And so obviously we want to avoid that. One of the things that I had read talked about, show me his company and I'll tell you the man. So just let me see the people that this guy hangs out with. Let me see their character and I can tell you what kind of man this person is. And I think that that's very true. Let's go ahead and move on to, I don't have to click. Let me put the clicker down for a while. Proverbs chapter 16 and verse 29. Lindsay?
Entices his neighbor and leads him in a way that is not good.
All right, what do we take away from that in regards to our children choosing friends? Ken, what do you think?
Well, it states that violent people lead us in the wrong direction. I don't know what we mean by a violent person. There might be a better translation of that in a different version. But it sounds like somebody you don't want to be around, an evil person, you know. So you just avoid them.
Yeah, when I was looking at this passage, almost everything that I would look at would actually lump 27 through 29. A lot of them would even lump 27 through 30 together. And I think that if you look at these verses, I think that it helps us understand this man that is talking about here. So in verse 27 it says, a worthless man digs up evil while his words are like scorching fire. A perverse man spreads strife, and a slanderer separates intimate friends. A man of violence entices his neighbors and leads him in the way that is not good. So that's the type of person that we need to avoid, the type of person that he's worthless, he's perverse, he's a slanderer, he's a man of violence. All of these are really the same man. And the thing that I kind of latch on to here is this idea of enticing. And this is someone that is alluring us, deceiving us, flattering us, persuading us with the way that they are and the things that they say. And we talked about just a second ago this idea of having a choice. We do have a choice in the matter. We have a choice in to have the wisdom and the courage to hopefully make the right choice. And I thought of Proverbs 3:31. It says, do not envy a man of violence and do not choose any of his ways. So again, we have the choice in the matter, and that's part of training our children to develop the courage to stand up to someone that they might think is cool or someone that they might think is popular and everybody else thinks is popular. You know, you may need to avoid them, and that takes courage and something that we need to train our children in. Norm?
The idea of why would somebody want to join a gang? But this talks directly to that. There's an enticement to being with a group of folks that is the biggest and the baddest. I grew up in South Philly, which is a very different environment than what we have here. And I can just imagine what those kids in Chicago are going through, and LA, and there's Christians there. And this speaks directly to that kind of a thing. And we shouldn't fool ourselves that it's not something that we have to worry about in our little country school. Because bullying and all that kind of stuff is something that's very prevalent. You don't have to be in a gang to be able to experience that.
So let's go ahead and keep it moving. Proverbs 22, 24 through 25. Andy?
Make no friendship with an angry man, and with a furious man do not go, lest you learn his ways and set a snare for your soul.
All right, what do you think about that?
It's kind of similar to the other one, to the last one a little bit. I mean, the people that you're around is going to rub off on you. And so if you have anger issues or mischievous activities, then a lot of times then you'll be just like what you said earlier about then you get yourself in trouble.
Yeah, I think that this is one of the things that we see just throughout scriptures, and one of the things that is so critical that we teach our children is you are going to be influenced by those that you are most closely associated with. You're going to be influenced by them. And so yes, if they're an angry type of person, then you will probably start leaning toward being an angry type of person. Or if they're a greedy type of person, then you're probably going to start leaning toward being a greedy type of person. And they are going to rub off on you. And I think that we talked about this with one of the questions, and we may have talked about it a couple of times, but with this, I think about the computer term, garbage in, garbage out. And if you're surrounding yourself with garbage and that's all you're taking in, then eventually that's all you're going to be putting out. And so we have to make sure that we help our children understand that those things are going to have an effect on you. You may think that you're strong enough or that you're a good person and you're not going to be influenced in this way, but we can't be naive. And we obviously have plenty of passages that we're even talking about here that help us to understand that. Anybody else on Proverbs 22? Norm?
One of the previous ones do kind of go hand in hand, because the person that is angry is often described as the person who's also violent. And we've seen that the people that get angry, their hands are all over the place, and they really would, depending on their self-control, just hit you rather than talk to you. And Michael Brown, I think, is a perfect case of what can be the result of this. They talk about a violent person leads you to harm. And Michael Brown was described as a gentle giant by everyone who knew him, and yet he was involved in a great deal of violence when he was killed. But nobody talked about the 24-year-old man that was with him the entire time. The one that had the criminal record, the one that spent his time pimping out the strength of that old man, or the younger man. And it's not hard to see it. He's cooler, he's older. He's done the time, he's done the violence, and he's using this vulnerable young man who's much larger than him, much bigger than him, and egging him on with the anger, egging him on with all the words, to commit acts of violence that he normally wouldn't do. Because if you listen to the normal life that Michael Brown had up to the point that he was killed, you think, why was he even involved in beating up a store clerk? It just was so out of character from everything that everyone else had talked to him in school, his parents, around the neighborhood, people. But that day he was with a 24-year-old man that he'd become friends with recently, who was not from that neighborhood with all those other people, who was a criminal, who was a man of violence and anger. And so in a very short period of time, someone who was described as a gentle giant became violent and was killed at 18 years old. A short amount of time. So it's not something like, oh, this is a long build-up. No, this can happen very quickly, and the most vulnerable are the teenagers.
Yeah, I definitely think that this is something that is huge for our kids, but I think it's big for all of us as Christians, because even when we're older, we can still be influenced by those that we are around a lot, especially if you're at school or you're at work, your co-workers, they can be an influence on us. All right, 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 33, obviously probably the most well-known passage whenever we're talking about the choice of our friends. Tiffany?
Do not be deceived. Evil company corrupts good habits.
All right, so what do we think about that in regards to choosing our friends?
Think that just because you're a Christian or you think that you're going to be good all the time, if you surround yourself with people who are doing bad things, you're easily could fall into that sin that they're doing.
And I think that is what's so critical, this idea of not deceiving ourselves, not being so naive that we think that, well, I'm such a good person, or I'm a righteous person, and so I'm not going to allow myself to be influenced by this evil. And you are ultimately deceiving yourselves if that is what you think, and that's something that we have to be very clear in helping to to train and help our children understand. Norm?
Part is really, God put it right up front there in that verse. That is critical to it, because we can easily deceive ourselves, and if you're talking to your kids about their friends, man, you're setting up a situation where they could be self-deceiving themselves just because you say he's not good. Well, I know better. I've been with him. How much time do you say? You're setting up in their mind. You just have to be aware that there could be some pushback going on in there, and that's why the deceit thing is so important, because it is deceitful. It'll sneak up on you and grab you before you even can know what's going on.
There was an old proverb that when I was going through this that I had saw that I actually hadn't read before, and it says there were 2 dry logs of wood and 1 green log, but the dry logs burn up the green log. And so there was this kind of explanation of this, and it said there is no difficulty in this saying. He who frequents the company of bad or corrupt men will soon be as they are. He may be sound in the faith and have the life and power of godliness, and at first frequent their company only for the sake of their pleasing conversation or their literary accomplishments, and he may think of his faith proof against their infidelity, but he will soon find, by means of their glozing speeches, his faith weakened, and when once he gets under the empire of doubt, unbelief will soon prevail. His bad company will corrupt his morals, and the 2 dry logs will soon burn up the green one. So we have to not be deceived, and allowing ourselves, and especially teaching our children that those things are going to happen. And I think one of the practical things that we can do is talk about situations in our own life and help them understand, look, I've lived this, I've done this, I've made this bad choice, and I've hung around with this crowd, and this was the outcome. We need to be honest with our children about the mistakes that we have made in choosing our companions. Jeff?
See the context, it's really it talks about those that say there's no resurrection, so they say, well, let's just eat, drink, we're going to die tomorrow. But you see what that context is, that you pull away from God and God's ways, look where you end up. And I think sometimes we kind of isolate that verse, and obviously it's a good principle, but when you read the whole context, I mean, you're literally have the opportunity to separate yourself from God. And I think to Todd's point, so, well, there's nothing in God, so who cares if you're gay, lesbian, whatever, or in this case, it's feast and eat and drink, but it can apply to anything immoral when you start trying to pull God out of it.
Yeah, and we have to help our children understand it's not like a fire hydrant, and it's just all going to happen. It's like a trickle effect, and it's going to slowly happen, but it will definitely happen if that's the people that we hang out with. All right, moving on to question number 2. My clicker now doesn't work. Sean, if you could click us to the next slide. So this is Psalm 119, verse 63. I'm a companion of all who fear you and of those who keep your precepts. And so the question is, what are the benefits for our children of choosing godly companions? And provide at least one Bible example to illustrate this point. So one of the things that I had come across that I wanted to share before we answer the question, Sean, if you could click to the next slide. And this is from a book called Successful Christian Parenting by John MacArthur. He says, if you do not help your children select and help them learn to select for themselves the right kind of companions, the wrong kind of companions will inevitably select them. The responsibility of teaching children how to choose their friends wisely is therefore a fundamental element of successful biblical parenting. And I like this idea of we're helping to train them. We're helping them to make the right decisions. And it's not as easy or as simple as we just tell them. We have to help train their minds and their decision-making process so that they can ultimately make these decisions. Sean, go ahead and back up. So what are the benefits of our children of choosing godly companions, and some Bible passages that maybe you've come up with? Mr. Bill, what do you think?
Well, it's what we've been talking about. It's just the associations you make will kind of help frame who you are. So we talked about before of having a good spiritual foundation, and one basic principle is one of self-control. So many things come back to self-control. And being able to teach that, I think is very important, because there's so many changes going on as our children reach this particular age. So obviously the benefits of our children choosing godly companions is it will help them to maintain their faith and to seek spiritual things first.
Yeah, and that's a huge thing, finding people that are going to help you in that regard, not hinder you. Jeff?
You said the first one that came to my mind was David and Jonathan, and how that friendship formed. And, even look at David taking in Mephibosheth, or however you say his name, later on in life, and all that. How strong that bond was, and how they supported each other, and all those kind of things.
Yeah, that was one that I had thought of. What are some other examples that we can read of in the scriptures of good companionship? Ken?
Joshua and Caleb standing against the other 10 tribes, not wanting to go into the land.
Yeah.
Took a lot of courage.
I mean, you would think that, or you would hope that these men individually would have the courage to stand up, but how much easier is it when you've got somebody standing beside you, even if you've got 10 standing against you, when you've got somebody standing beside you that's willing to have the courage to stand up for what's right. Andy?
We don't have a lot of extra information, but you think about all of maybe what Noah went through. He must have obviously had a pretty good wife, because their children were raised and they all had believing wives, and that was the whole 8 people that was saved on the whole earth.
Yeah, and one of the other ones that I thought of, kind of in along the same lines, there's not a lot of specific information given, but who we've been studying in Acts. You think of Paul, and we focus on Paul so often, but a lot of the stories that we talk about is Paul and Barnabas. Or what about the situation with Paul and Silas when they're in the prison? Again, maybe Paul would have been strong enough on his own to have been singing praises and praying by himself, but how much easier is it that he's got Silas right there beside him, and they're together singing these songs and praying to God. And then you think of all of the other ones that we know about with Luke, with Timothy, with Aquila and Priscilla, all of these companions that he had that no doubt were going to help him, and in fact did help him along the way. And thinking of Timothy, one of the passages that I thought of was 2 Timothy 2:22. And I will tell you that for me, this is one of those aha moments where I looked at this passage and I had never paid attention to the wording of the last part of the passage. I have always focused on the first part. 2 Timothy 2:22, it says, "Now flee from youthful lust and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace." And that's what I always remember. It's always, flee these youthful lusts, and I really didn't pay enough attention to the last part of the passage there and his encouragement really to Timothy, and it says, "With those who call on the Lord from a pure heart." So Paul's exhorting Timothy to flee these things and pursue a Christian living by attaching himself to those who do likewise. So one thing that is going to help him to flee these things is to join with those who call on the Lord from a pure heart, to find these companions. And to me, I don't know, it was just like the light bulb went off, and it's like, wow. Like, okay, Timothy, you need to flee these things, but you know what you can do to help you? Find you a good companion, somebody that's going to help you, because this is tough. It's going to be hard. And the more godly people that you have surrounding you, the easier it's going to be. And I think that that's such a huge thing for us to teach our children. I thought of Ecclesiastes chapter 4, and verses 9 and 10, it says, "Two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. For if either of them falls, the one will lift up his companion. But woe to the one who falls when there is not another to lift him up." Again, how great is it that when you do stumble, that you've got a godly companion that's going to be willing to pick you up, as opposed to an evil companion or no companion, and you've got no one to pick you up, no one to help you along the way. That's such a huge thing. And I think that it's perfectly fine for us to teach our children friends are good. They can help us, but we need to make sure that we are choosing the right type of of friends, and that we've got godly companions that we are connecting ourselves with. Sorry, Miss Shirley.
Think, it would be hard to try to raise a child with a companion that wasn't a Christian, because you would be trying to train the child in the right direction, and maybe then the other parent would be pulling away. So it takes two to really direct a home in the right direction. It's hard for one, and you need to be careful, because they may, the people that they choose to be with as a companion, they can either make them a stronger Christian, or they can make them a weaker Christian. So they need to really think about it. And if your children are dating Christians, you don't worry as much about it as you do if they're dating one that's not a Christian, because you think, well, they're going to help them along the way. So, of course, Ray and I didn't think about marrying anybody that wasn't a Christian, and he didn't either. So it worked out, but I just can't imagine one trying to raise a child with one that's not a Christian.
Yeah, and I think that's an excellent answer to question 5, as far as one of the challenges of being married to a non-Christian is in raising your children, and you're basically both pulling in opposite directions. It's a very difficult thing, and I think that's a good place to start when you're looking for a companion, when you've already made up your mind, I'm not going to marry someone that's not a Christian. Brother Ray's already made up his mind, I'm not going to marry someone that's not a Christian. I think that's obviously a good place to start, so then whenever you're out in the world dating, you've already set your mind, set your heart to that. Anybody else on question 2, Brother Bill?
Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, here they are taken captive by Babylon, and they're expected to just kind of assimilate into that, and the 4 of them take a stand for what is right, even though all 4 of them would face death because of it, but they were victorious over that because God was with them.
Yeah. Yeah, again, I think it makes it so much easier whenever you have to stand up in the face of evil, to have somebody that is either standing right beside you or even help kind of push you along. I think that can only help, and something that, again, we need to make sure that we're helping our children understand as well. All right, Sean, if you would skip forward to question number 3. Why does it matter who our children date? Include scripture with your answer. Brother Robert, what do you think? Why does it matter who our children date?
Your words. They might marry.
Yeah, I think, and I had never heard this term, I think until I heard Brother Jesse say it, but every date is a potential mate, I think is the way that he worded it. So at least that's what you would think is the thought process going into it. I don't know, maybe there are people out there that are wanting to date someone just for the fun of it, and they actually have no intention. Of course, as Christians, I don't know that necessarily should be the way that we are looking at it, or teaching our children too, that just date someone for the fun of it. What else? Why does it matter who our children date? And maybe some passages that you've thought of. Ken?
Genesis chapter, I forgot what chapter it is. Anyway, the story of Esau, when he selected his wives from the daughters of Canaan, the Hittites primarily, and said that it brought grief to his mother and father, Isaac and Rebekah. Yeah,
that's the first passage that we'll look at in question 4, Genesis 26:34 through 35. And yeah, that's one thing, because ultimately if this date becomes their mate and it's not a good one, then it's going to cause a lot of grief for the mother and the father. What else? So one of the passages, go ahead, sorry.
I was thinking of Jezebel and
Ahab and the influence. He was already a bad king, but it says Jezebel caused him to be an even worse king. And I think about when we spend so much time with people, you start to unconsciously use some of their own phrases, or you start mimicking some of their mannerisms, and it's not even conscious. It's unconscious a lot of the times. And when you date, or then after you marry, you're spending so much time with this person, you almost can't help but be influenced by them, and it better be for the good and not for the bad.
Yeah, I think this is so much, I won't say so much more serious, but it's more serious to me than just a regular friendship. Because once you've got this emotional connection, what tends to happen is it allows you to be more easily deceived, and you become blind to things that you would oftentimes not be blind to, because I like this person, and I want to believe in this person, and I want to believe all things good about this person. And so you can start getting to the point that you're going to listen to what they have to say, oftentimes even more so than what your parents have to say. Because obviously my parents don't really know what they're talking about. I know this person. I know this person very well. And so everything is fine, and y'all just need to calm down. So we have to make sure that we recognize that we can be blind. Is that blinded by love? Ken?
Song that says, when your heart's on fire, smoke gets in your eyes.
I've never heard of that song, but that sounds like a good one. Also, you're going to get burned when you're that close. Todd and then Norm.
Yeah, I guess maybe one of the obvious things is if your child is dating somebody who is not raised learning the scriptures, or don't know what their parents are teaching them, you can't assume that they have the same understanding about what's appropriate in a relationship. And so you got to make sure you talk to your children about premarital sex and all those temptations. But even if you've drilled that into your kid, and suddenly their girlfriend or boyfriend, who doesn't care one bit about what they do when, is going to be leading them into temptation.
Yeah, that's one of them where you can be blinded. And again, you may have made your own mind up that you're going to maintain your purity. But when you've got someone that you do care about, that you have feelings for, and they're slowly, this trickle effect, they're working on you of this is not that big of a deal, and this is what two people do that love each other and that have feelings for each other. And yeah, it's a very, very dangerous situation to be involved with. Miss Shirley?
I think back when I was 18 and dating at 18, but when you're 18 and then it's different. Your mindset is different at 18 than it is at 22, or 16 to 18, or 20. So you kind of have to warn your children not to be too eager to get into a situation, even if it is with a Christian. Because what I thought at 18, I didn't think at 22. Ray and I was 22 when Ray and I married, and I think back when I was 18, and my concept was not the same. So I think that would be a good thing to pass on to your children. You learn a little bit more with age.
Yeah. So I'm going to make a kind of a broad brush stroke here, but I'm going to assume that everybody that is in here this evening would say that there is at least wisdom in marrying a Christian. Now, I'm not going to say that anybody's going to go so far as to say it's a sin if you marry a non-Christian, but I believe we would all agree that the scriptures are very, very clear on the wisdom of marrying a Christian. And so if we're going to say that every date is a potential mate, and we think that the wisest thing is for our children to marry a Christian, then what about a situation where our children are dating a non-Christian? In the sense of, Norm was talking about earlier about being an influencer, not being influenced. At the same time, we're supposed to evangelize the world, and so it could be a potential convert. I've also heard, what's this, the phrase? Date and or no, what is it? Something and convert. Flirt and convert. That's right. And I'm learning so much stuff now that I'm 40. So, I mean, what do you think about that? The possibility of, we've gone over all these passages and recognize the influence that we will come to us from those that are around us, but then obviously we also want to be teaching. So, how do we handle that situation? Norm?
Trying to teach, if you're gonna date, especially one that's non-Christian, you want to try to encourage them to come to church with you and study with you and you know, become a Christian. And all three of my girls was like 22 when they married, so I felt like their mindset was, and they all three married a Christian, and it didn't work out always, but still, I would still say, you know, you can teach them. And sometimes maybe that teaching is not as deep as it should be.
Norm, did you have your hand up or you just?
Yeah.
All right, you got 1 minute.
Why does it matter who our children date is because if you're teaching this properly, that dating is in the investigation into another person to see whether or not you want to be with them for the rest of your life, the rest of their life. Because Jesus said, what God has joined, let not man separate. And there is no friendship like that, ever, anywhere. The only relationship that is like that is between you and God and you and your spouse. And so why does it matter? Because what God has joined, let not man separate. That's why it matters. And whether you're going to flirt and convert or whichever way you want to go with it, it's the second most important relationship you'll ever have, period, in the story. The first is with God. If you've got that settled, if that part is taken care of, this becomes less of a worry. Because if they're devoted to going to heaven and following after God, we're going to make decisions. And again, at this point, they're past the point where you get to choose for them. You have to guide and show options. Because they're ultimately going to make the choice for themselves.
But I think that's the point that we still have to make to them is you still have the choice.
Yep.
And
they can still say no up to that point when they get to that altar. That's the part where they can say at this point, if something bugs you, bothers you, it is not set in stone that just because you have an engagement ring, that's your wedding day, you're standing in front of the man who said you're going to marry, you've got a boy, a woman who you're going to marry. It's at that moment you can't say, do you take this person to your lawful wedded spouse, your wife? You can say no. And that is okay.
one of the things that I think we have to be aware of, though, as parents, is if we do have a child that is dating someone that is a non-Christian, how we treat them could play a huge factor in them actually being converted. And I was reading a story about a girl that was dating a non-Christian, and her mother would have nothing to do with the guy, and totally showed an attitude of someone that was not a Christian, and he was completely turned off from Christianity because of the way that this person's mother was treating him. And so we have to be aware of that. Last thing I'll say, and I joked with my mom even before class tonight, that I got to teach my kids the most important thing is find somebody that's pretty. And she says, you better quit joking about that. In Proverbs 31, verse 30, charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. And if you actually think about it, Proverbs starts and ends with really the exact same thing. And the fear of the Lord is the condition of all womanly as well as manly excellence. Thanks, everybody. Brother Jesse, Lord willing, we'll be back next Wednesday. Pick up with question 4.